if you sun your balls, there is a study. It's an older study. I think it's from like the 50s or 60s that shows that it does improve androgens. I think it's pretty fucking primal.
So sun your balls.
Sun your balls.
Perfect.
What's up, guys? Derek, moreplates.com. Today we are going to be talking about sunning your balls. Yes, indeed, your ball sack, your gonads, your testicles, the goddamn family jewels. These are very, very delicate things and basically dictate your intratesticular testosterone production as well as sperm production, motility, morphology, how fertile you are as a human, etc. So this is a practice that has been getting some hype lately, is sunning your balls. Liver King was recently on a Barstool Sports podcast and asked very candidly about going out in the sun, balls ablazing, and if that is helpful or not. And it's a practice that some people are starting to do now off the the hype train. Is this something you should actually be doing for enhancing fertility, enhancing testosterone? Let's find out.
Another question: what are your thoughts on sunning the perineum for vitamin D exposure and absorption?
Yeah. What's the perineum?
So there's this movement to get vitamin D where people are sunning their assholes and perineums. Do you think that works into the primal lifestyle, or what's your opinion on that?
Yeah.
How fucking primal is it to just go face your asshole to the sun and spread them cheeks, bro? It's like the most primal thing I can think of.
When you mention sun and asshole, I'm thinking subprimal. Right. But if you sun your balls, there is a study. It's an older study. I think it's from like the 50s or 60s that shows that it does improve androgens, not necessarily testosterone, but some of the androgens either upstream or downstream from testosterone. I think it's pretty fucking primal, right? I mean, we didn't evolve.
Pretty fucking primal. Like, pull out your balls, bro. God damn.
Essentially with clothes, right? Clothes are relatively new, I think within the last 100,000 years or so. I think it's pretty primal to do. And again, there's a study that says that it's beneficial. So
sun your balls.
Sun your balls.
Perfect.
Yeah. So when you're outside next time, just whip them out. That is, you're just missing out on benefits if you do not. Is that actually the truth? Let's find out. Quick note from today's sponsor. It is the facilitator of smooth ball sacks, bro. This is Manscaped. Yeah, if you don't Manscaped, what the fuck are you doing? You got to get on it. So this is a company that you might have seen around. They're pretty popular. And if you haven't heard, this is part of their fucking pitch. It's Smooth Sack Summer, bro. If you didn't know, it ends in a month, but you got to get on it if you're not on it. When you're playing in the summer sun, make sure you're scaped from pubes to bum. That's right. This is the summer to keep your balls cool while still looking hot with Manscaped. The leader in below the belt grooming is making sure we all have a ball this summer by giving our pants partners everything they need to stay fresh. Dive headfirst into Smooth Sack Summer by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping with my code, specifically Derek. Use my code. Helps support the channel, helps give back, and also if you just need a good kit for actually staying smooth sacked and also just manscaping in general, because again, especially for bodybuilders or fitness enthusiasts alike, myself included, I'm somebody who manscapes not just my pubes, but also my ridiculous overgrown chest hair, ab hair, back hair, etc., because I like to show all of the muscular detail that I have worked for. It makes it's like an instant 2 to 3% body fat difference when you have a bunch of hair on yourself versus not. So check it out if you want to support me. Link is in the description below, as well as the coupon code that I mentioned. It is Derek. Remember that for your free shipping and 20% off at checkout. And back to our regularly scheduled programming. So he's not totally wrong. And again, he's going off of memory. It's not like he has the fucking internet at his fingertips while he's in a podcast. So I don't blame him for being off the mark slightly, but also his business partner, Paul Saladino, has touched on this in a recent video, I believe, as well. And there is, some literature, very sparse, but it exists. There is this one study on irradiation of your testicles in contrast to other areas of your body, and does this localized activity actually result in increased androgen production? And it seems to, but we'll get into that in a sec. So this is the study. Influence of ultraviolet irradiation upon excretion of sex hormones in the male. So this is a very old study. It was from, the 30s, bro, 1939. Super old. So as you would expect, this is even pre-development of tissue selective anabolic steroids, before very comprehensive knowledge around androgens and their upstream and downstream precursors and subsequent metabolites and stuff. So be mindful of that as we dig into this, as well as the lack of literature essentially available on this subject in general, because it is kind of a weird thing sunning your balls, as you would expect. So a wealth of studies on the influence of light upon the sexual cycle, pituitary activity, fertility, etc. have been carried out in recent years. Among the external factors which are susceptible of influencing sexual activity, light varying according to seasons and climates is included by Benoit as of first importance. Observations by Bissonnette and Check that hens with additional light during the night start egg laying several months earlier than breeds of the same age, but without additional light, have been confirmed and are now completely accepted. So does circadian, biology play a big impact on your hormone secretion patterns and whatnot? Massively. This is something that if you are chronically underslept or you have suboptimal sleep patterns because you're not following your circadian rhythm, or you're even eating patterns are misaligned with your circadian rhythm. There are so many ways you can indirectly screw yourself over and inhibit very important hormone systems, not just, testosterone as most people would assume, but adrenal output, which, will have backhand consequences on testosterone, as well as actual stress hormones, downstream to cortisol, as well as your emotional stability, mental well-being, so many things that are going to be impacted as a cascading collateral damage of having poor sleep and inadequate light exposure. And again, obviously getting adequate vitamin D. I think most of us are pretty familiar with the importance of adequate vitamin D status. How many people are deficient in this new modern environment where people are stuck in offices and cubicles all day, or stuck at home in their offices on Zoom and shit all day, whatever the common thing is now. And a lot of people are deficient and do actually should be getting more regular sunlight and waking up, exposing themselves to the sun for a certain amount of time, duration kind of dependent on where you live, potentially supplementing with vitamin D if warranted, and just getting outside and getting out of your house, bro. Touch some grass. So we get into this study though, which is directly, literally localized sun on your balls. Is that a good thing? In your backyard, should you be going out nude? Obviously not a public thing to do unless you're at, a nude beach where it's acceptable. I don't think I need to talk about that. Fucking obvious. But sunning your balls. Should you do it? Should you even concern yourself with it? Let's get into it. So basically what they did was they would actually compare patients that have had actual exposure to different parts of their body. So here they did 5 irradiations of chest, 3 irradiations of chest, 5 irradiations of genital region, and they showed different kinds of androgen output relative to these localized irradiation cycles, essentially. So the results in our group of patients up to the present have been surprisingly uniform. Figure 1 demonstrates the typical reaction. The androsterone excretion, determined twice before starting irradiation, was about 70 IU androsterone per liter and approximately per day. After 5 irradiations of the chest, the hormone output was raised to 155 IU per liter. That is an increase of 120%. These 5 irradiations were given in 5 consecutive days in the usual manner of application of ultraviolet light for medical purposes, namely the eyes enclosed and in addition covered with dark glasses. In this particular case, head, chest, genitalia, and thighs were exposed to radiation, the light being focused on the lower thorax and upper abdomen. After an interval of 8 days without irradiation, the hormone output went back to its previous level of about 70 IU androsterone per liter. 3 more irradiations given over a period of 5 days raised the hormone level from 70 to 140 per liter. After an interval of 5 days without treatment, output fell back to 80, and another examination 2.5 weeks later showed it to be again 70 IU per liter. Next set of radiation was applied solely to the genitals and its immediate vicinity, the remainder of the body being carefully protected from all rays. Imagine this was actually how you went about it. Just lay in your fucking backyard, literally covered head to toe and just your balls chilling. After 5 irradiations during 6 days, the androsterone excretion was raised from 70 to 205 IU, nearly 200%, bro. 5 more irradiations during the next 5 days did not further raise the hormone output, but it persisted at nearly the same level. After another 10-day interval without irradiation, the hormone output went back to its normal level, about 70 IU per liter. Findings in this case merit the emphasis of repetition, namely that 5 irradiations are more effective than 3. Furthermore, the 10 irradiations are not more effective than 5. We must assume that the peak of reaction is reached either by 5 irradiations or at about that number. Finally, it is to be stressed that irradiation of the genital region is more effective than irradiation of other, even much larger parts of the body. In all cases in which irradiation was applied I spit on my fucking keyboard, was applied on consecutive or nearly consecutive days, a peak was found after about 5 irradiations. A case in which irradiations were applied twice weekly at first and later only once weekly did not show the peak after 5 irradiations. So basically what you're finding is that getting localized exposure of your testicles is going to be impactful. Previous occasion, irradiation of the genital region proved to be more effective, rise from 110 to 320 IU per liter after 6 irradiations than irradiation of a much larger non-genital parts of the body. So yeah, pretty fucking conclusive, right? Now again, what is androsterone? Is this something we actually give a fuck about at the end of the day? Because again, this is something that they are stating pretty conclusively in the study is happening, but it is not testosterone levels. It is androsterone levels. So what are those levels? Are they important? Are they downstream? Is it something that could convert to testosterone and then increase those levels significantly, improve intratesticular testosterone levels, and downstream to that have some sort of impact on, actual, sperm count, quality, motility, morphology, etc. We get to the summary. Ultraviolet irradiation applied with a mercury quartz lamp increases the excretion of androsterone in urine. Measurements were made colorimetrically. Irradiation of the scrotum and its vicinity proves to be more effective than irradiation of other parts of the skin. Our experiments furnish no proof that the pituitary plays a role in the stimulation of increased androgenic activity. So again, this is something that is occurring in the actual localized area. So again, your pituitary is not in your ball sack. So this is the thing that is going to dictate how much LH gets sent down to your testes to stimulate Leydig cells to then actually produce testosterone in your testicles. And downstream to that, with your FSH output from the pituitary down to the testicles too, you also have the Sertoli cells being stimulated and the actual spermatogenesis cascade occurring where you are, inducing fertility outcomes and, intratesticular testosterone concurrently and getting the most, literally making you a man essentially. But again, if you have this localized activity from this mercury quartz lamp or, UV exposure, whatever the fuck, are you actually getting more testosterone output? Not necessarily. Because this is having no impact on the pituitary, at least definitively based on this data. So if we're using this as some sort of reference point for increased androgen secretion outcomes, what do we actually see when we see a steroidogenesis chart for cholesterol downstream to all of these sex hormones? This is how steroidogenesis occurs. You have this cholesterol backbone, which is then cleaved and manipulated in many different ways to then downstream, you get DHEA, androstenedione, testosterone, 5-AR converts it to DHT, and subsequent to that, you have this aromatase aromatizing these different base hormones to estradiol or estrone, which downstream leads to estriol. We have E1, E2, E3. And testosterone is the, main androgen we are concerned with when it comes to LH output, having some sort of direct metric of response elements at the testes. But where is androsterone on this cascade? Is it even, is it up here? Is it something that's going to lead to more testosterone? No, we actually have to look at the backdoor pathway to assess where androsterone even is. So there is several different avenues for steroidogenesis to occur, whereby you have cholesterol, downstream you have pregnenolone, which can then branch off into these different kinds of glucocorticoids. Like for example, you have the cortisol downstream from the same base, cleavage, patterns essentially. You have cholesterol downstream leading to cortisol output, and this is where you get, some of these catabolic hormones. You get things that impact mineral water retention, things of this nature. Mineral corticoids up here, the glucocorticoids down here, and then all the way downstream to that, you have the actual androgens, which are something that impacts any sort of androgen receptor related functions in the body at the end of the day. So again, we don't see androsterone anywhere on here. So where does it actually line up in this backdoor pathway and how impactful is it? Downstream from pregnenolone, we have something called allopregnenolone, which is something that is very, very heavily involved in 5-alpha reductase inhibition side effects for individuals who end up with post-finasteride syndrome. The kind of anxiolytic effects that you get from allopregnenolone seem to be something that may be a problem in individuals with that issue, or in postpartum depression. The progestogenic cascade and the lack of allopregnenolone is, significantly implicated in some of these postpartum depression cases, is why there was a synthetic drug that is literally made to be like a synthetic replica of this essentially, that is prescribed and super expensive if I recall correctly. But notice down here we have this ADT, through CYP17A1, if you actually break down what is androsterone, you can see that it is on the steroidogenesis chart down past the corticosteroids on the right-hand side, and then down further to that allopregnanolone, converting to 17-OH allopregnanolone, and then down here we have actual androsterone going to androstenediol through a backdoor pathway to DHT. Following this steroidogenesis chart is not something I would expect anyone to know off the top of their head. Even me going through this, it's like a fucking nightmare to remember like where stuff goes where and kind of jumping between. Like all these graphs aren't all encompassing either. Like you can see how much is missing on the left side over here, which is also missing up here on this one, which is also missing from the fucking side chart over here in between here. So, you know, it's not unexpected to get like completely, you know, topsy-turvy when trying to figure out all this shit. But at the end of the day, what is the takeaway? It's that even when the gonadotropins are completely shut down, and that is the primary dictating metric by which stimulates testosterone output in the testes, whatever backdoor conversion you were getting through this androsterone is negligible as fuck at the end of the day. So despite the fact that androsterone levels are increasing significantly, with this irradiation of the testicles specifically, is it actually worth pursuing in like a practical outcome aspect from a testosterone secretion perspective? No, to be honest. Like you are getting negligible amounts of testosterone DHT through backdoor pathways. This is something that is there and is present, and is something even like even if you go and look at the castrati that were castrated before they entered puberty in order to retain their angelic singing voices, they retain those voices despite the fact that they still have functioning adrenal steroid production. They still have this backdoor pathway functioning, but it's not enough to push them through puberty or facilitate adequate androgenic signaling in the body. So this is not something that's going to have some like significant impact on your testosterone levels in an anabolic capacity, or what I presume to be on maybe your fertility metrics change in some capacity, but is it significant enough to actually like go out of your way to fucking sun your balls, spread your goddamn ass cheeks to the sun? Probably not, bro. You know, if you want to tan nude, you know, could there be some benefits to it locally? Again, you have to consider so many of these cascades occur literally locally in the tissue. So that it's not unexpected that if you have some sort of direct exposure to a localized area, that you might be able to enhance some of these downstream cascades to an enhanced degree through this, you know, stimulation process. But ultimately, the thing that dictates what this level is here of testosterone and your actual spermatogenesis outcomes is going to be your LH output and your FSH output, not the random shit you do over here with your adrenal steroids, from what I've seen personally. So, you know, I could be wrong, but that is what my speculation is. I do not think it's worth going out of your way to do it if it is like an added hindrance to your, you know, like how many biohacks can you add to your routine before it's just like your entire day is just fucking biohacking, grounding, doing your daily, you know, affirmations, doing this, doing that. Before you know it, you're like not even getting any fucking work done because you're trying to optimize so much. And no, this is not one of the things to spend your time on. If you're gonna be outside, great. You do need some sun exposure, absolutely recommend it. But to actually pull out your ball sack and intentionally go spend like 20 minutes in the sun trying to get some enhanced androsterone output, not worth it whatsoever. Even when it comes to, you know, like outcomes from sauna, you know, this is something that you can actually see seemingly some negative outcomes on sperm metrics, which is, you know, not something we want. So this is why it's something to be mindful of if you're like a chronic sauna user. And I don't say that as a bad thing, like the sauna has exceptional benefits in some areas, but you know, in other areas like fertility, it may be problematic, and is where you might want to look into either the frequency or the duration of it, or the, you know, taking means to attenuate it through a potentially icing your balls even. Not something I would definitely recommend or whatever, because again, just another one of those fucking things you have to add to your crazy biohacking regimen potentially, and it seems like very cumbersome. But this was an article that actually referenced my friend Vigorous Steve as well as myself, and kind of went into some of the literature on it. And it does seem to have some impactful effects on fertility. Again, it's not going to be testosterone output. This is something that is going to be more so fertility metrics from like a sperm aspect, not from a actual pituitary output aspect. Any localized activity and localized exposure from stimulation to something, hormetic response in your testes from something directly on your testes will be occurring in the testes. It's not going to enhance how much pituitary output there is of LH and FSH. So that is something to be mindful of. Maybe if you get enhanced like circulation or whatever from the icing the testicles, then maybe you have some sort of like better response elements being elicited from the, Sertoli cell activation and whatnot, from the FSH that you already had a, certain amount of. I can't really say for certain what the mechanism of action is, but I mean, if we're going to be talking about sunning your balls specifically, that does not seem to be a practice based on the literature that I've seen, at least, that is worth pursuing. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw certain metrics that are acutely increased, but again, is it worth the hassle? If it is a hassle for you, is it worth just going nude instead of, with your clothes on or, shorts on, whatever, if you're going to be choosing between a nude beach and a normal beach based on these studies or something? I wouldn't really like impose any sort of like annoyance in your lifestyle based on this. Just put it that way. So anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. All the comments help the algorithm. Much appreciated. Like, subscribe, check out my blog. Moreplatemordays.com. Follow me on Instagram, @MorePlatesMoreDays, Facebook, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the channel, check out anything I'm associated with in the video description below. My preventative medicine, hormone replacement therapy platform. Get connected with high quality doctors, medical providers who understand this stuff inside out and will actually be able to make targeted recommendations based on things that actually move the needle from a hormone production aspect, from a lifestyle interventions aspect, dietary manipulation, supplementation, whatever it is. Even if it's actual literal HRT, having somebody in your camp who actually knows this shit and is an expert in it and follows the most up-to-date literature in endocrinology, pharmacology, absolutely prudent, and I cannot understate the importance of that enough, or overstate. I always fucking mix those up, bro. As far as anything else that supports me, and if you just want blood work, by the way, it's linked in the description below as well. You can just get your own labs and assess them yourself, or you can have a medical provider at our company look through them and make targeted recommendations for you with our kind of like concierge, overall full spectrum service that I mentioned earlier briefly. And then anything else that supports me, it's all down there in the video description. Recommended diet model for gaining muscle and sports performance, whilst being mindful of micronutrient intake and all of the things that are upstream to hormone production and the cofactors needed. And anything else I'm associated with, it's all down there. Thank you guys for watching. Talk to you soon.